Hello, my name's Florence. Welcome to theobspod. I'm an NHS obstetrician, hoping to share some thoughts and experiences about my working life. Perhaps you enjoy Call the Midwife, maybe birth fascinates you, or you're simply curious about what exactly an obstetrician is. You might be pregnant and preparing for birth. Perhaps you work in maternity and want to know what makes your obstetric colleagues tick, or you want some fresh ideas and inspiration. Whichever of these is the case, and for that matter, anyone else that's interested, the obspod is for you. Episode 77, a chat with JennytheM. Today I am here very excitedly with Jenny the midwife. Welcome, Jenny. It is fantastic to have you on the obspod. I am thrilled. I've been desperate to have you come and chat to me for a while. And Jenny, would you like to tell people a little bit about yourself, just in case they don't know who you are?
Oh, yes, I'd love that. It's lovely to be with you, Flo, and I've got a lot of respect for you as an obstetrician. And, it's great to have a friend who's an obstetrician, because it's like that connection, isn't it, of caring for women and families and, birth people, as sometimes people refer to them. And I just think it's important to have this connection with people who have a different role than you, but yet our roles are intertwined. And obviously I retired a few years ago now, nearly 3 years ago. But yeah, I'm a retired midwife, but I'm still on the register because I do help people with a few bits and bats problems. I get messages from student midwives who are struggling. I joined the NHS in 1979 and I worked until 2018. So I did quite a few years, nearly 40 years I did.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and I was a sister on a medical ward first, and then I went into midwifery because of my experience of birth with my daughter, which I think helped me a lot in a way. I met a brilliant community midwife. And then I started tweeting about skin to skin. And it just went a bit crazy, really. I don't understand how it's all happened, because I'm just a normal person who just harps on about things sometimes. But it just took off, the skin to skin. And I think it's helped quite a lot of obstetricians, midwives, women to look at things differently about when a woman just wants that initial contact with a baby, or a record of her initial contact with a baby when she's might have had a anaesthetic, a general anaesthetic. She just wants some kind of record that she, as that baby, has touched her skin first. Even if it's just a little brush against her cheek. I think it's important. So that's me, really. I'm just who I am. Northern lass.
No, you're incredible. So the skin to skin, that's how I found you, as it were. So I had just started tweeting and I was kind of exploring a bit, didn't really know what I was doing. And I came across you and skin to skin, and I thought, oh, skin to skin in the operating theatre. I haven't thought about that. That sounds interesting. And I think I perhaps messaged you and you messaged back, and I thought, right, I'm just going to walk into my theatre and try that. And I think you've had a massive influence, actually, because when I look now, I see a lot of people talking about skin to skin in theatre, and skin to skin in theatre being a much more normal thing to do. But when I went into my theatre and started to think about doing that, I thought, it sounds really stupid, but it hadn't really occurred to me before, which, just sounds a bit odd to not think about it.
I don't think it sounds odd. I think it sounds like we become embedded into the boxes that we're put into, don't we?
Yes.
And it's not actually, it's more of a get on with it kind of feel. Yes. The NHS, from managers and other people around us, get on with it. And I think sometimes to break that is a very difficult thing when you're rushing about and you've got so many things to do at work. And I don't think it's anybody's fault that we weren't thinking about it. But I think, with the MatX innovation, pioneering work, I think things are changing for women, and women are being the voice now. And we're the ones who must listen, instead of the women being the ones who have to listen, we are the ones who must listen.
Yes, no, that's very true. And often when I'm trying to introduce a change, I talk to women about it in clinic and tell them they should ask when they come in. And if people say they can't have something, they can say, Florence said I could do this. So I do think, coming from the women. So we had a few exchanges on Twitter, and then you mentioned MatX. So we were doing a kind of event in London for MatX as part of the Whose Shoes pilot workshops, maternity workshops that I was doing with Jill. And you came to London, and I remember saying to my children, oh, this is so exciting. I'm going to meet Jenny the midwife. And because my children were teenagers, they said, oh, don't you know, Mum, you should never meet anyone that you only know from social media off the internet. So they were very worried that you might be some weird stalker woman.
Yeah, or even somebody, not even a woman. That could have been.
Yeah, you could have been anyone. So they were very worried about my safety. So I assured them that we were meeting in a public place and that I thought it would be fine. And I remember we went because the workshop was at Guy's Hospital by London Bridge. I remember we met in a cafe, which was at the base of the Shard, and it turned out to be the most ridiculously posh cafe I think I've ever been in.
it was ridiculously posh. It was.
But it was fabulous. And I remember meeting you and just thinking, oh my God, this person is just so fantastic. And we so see eye to eye on so many things, and we could just talk and talk and talk. It was lovely.
It was lovely. And do you remember the heated toilet seats?
Yes, I do remember that. I remember you being like, oh my God, I've been to the ladies and the toilet seats are heated. What is this place?
Oh, that made me giggle so much. It was funny.
That was really funny. So, and then since then we've kind of messaged each other, and, I remember you ringing me a few times about work of, oh, this, that, and the other happened, and what do you think as an obstetrician? And it's just been lovely. But I guess I wanted to talk to you today because I wanted to talk a bit about skin to skin, but I feel like that's only one string to your bow. You've got a lot of different things going on, and a lot of what you talk to me about kind of make me think they're little gems. You're chock full of little gems, Jenny, from your nearly 40-year career. And I thought that would be fantastic to have a conversation and share some of those with some of my listeners. So if we come back to skin, I wanted to know a little bit about why did skin to skin become such a passionate kind of interest, and why did you decide to pioneer that?
Well, to be honest with you, when you think you'll never thank somebody who was horrible to you, I'm actually going to say thank you now to the people at work who were horrible to me in the NHS.
Okay.
Because if not for their dogged determination that skin to skin was not going to happen, I wouldn't have started to get a little chip on my shoulder about it and get annoyed about it. And I think their attitude towards it. I mean, I remember one day about 5 midwives standing around I was sat at the desk doing some computing for a birth, I think. And one of these midwives, they just stood around me and said, we're not doing it, Jenny. We're just not doing it. It's ridiculous. And they were actually crowding me out. So what I did was I stood on my chair. Obviously, it wasn't a wheelie chair. It was a normal chair. I stood on my chair and I just said, get away from me, because one day I will be the one who's laughing at you because you will be doing it.
Yeah.
And then
how intimidating.
It was very intimidating, extremely intimidating. But you know what? In a way, it gave me sort of I don't know, sometimes with me, I think I've been like this since I was quite young. If somebody says you can't do something, I think I can.
Yeah.
Or if
Yes.
somebody says something's not going to happen, I think I can. I used to stand up to a lot of people when I was younger.
Yeah.
Not always the right people, but I just think I had it within me to say no. So I just carried on. And I got so much challenging behaviour from people.
Yeah.
Be woman-centred. And then I realised that I could just tell the women. I just said to the women, look, when you go into theatre, you can have skin to skin. So I started sneaking in to the women going for elective cesarean and talking to them and doing a little demo about skin to skin. When the midwife who was looking after them had already been in the room, I'd go in and say, oh, I've been sent in because I'm skin to skin specialist midwife. And I've just come to talk to you about why skin to skin matters and how it happens, and you'll be fine. So when you get in theatre, you say, I'm having skin to skin. So it just started trickling at first. And obviously, you know about me, I wrote on the theatre wall in big letters.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a bit naughty, really. But I did it so that the women could see, is the baby in skin to skin? And they would feel, oh, that's a question. That means it happening.
So that is an amazing story. So what were you thinking in that moment when you thought, I'm going to write this on the theatre wall? Was it just like a moment of like inspiration or seeing red or what?
Seeing red, but seeing red for the women in a way that I'd been writing it on the whiteboard in theatre, and it kept being every time I went back into theatre, I wasn't working in theatre, I was working in the birth centre, which is hilarious in itself.
Yeah.
And because I just kept thinking there's no equality of birth for these women.
Yes.
The women who go in theatre don't have a birth equality to the women who have the physiological birth, and there should be some equality. So I kept writing on the whiteboard and it was wiped off.
Yeah.
And I went back. So I kept writing it on. So one day I thought, how can I stop them wiping it off?
Yeah.
Write it on the wall.
Yeah.
With a Sharpie. So I just
very brave.
I don't think I really thought it through. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Which I probably might not do that again.
Yeah.
But in the end, it made a difference. And then we got it off the World Health Organization checklist boards.
Yes.
Which was a positive thing.
Yes.
So
and I think it's a much more accepted thing now. So when I started offering skin to skin in theatre, inspired by you, it was a bit niche. Whereas now it's everybody knows they should be doing skin to skin in theatre at some point. And that kind of brings me on a little bit to what you and I were talking about the other day of what is skin to skin and how to do it properly, because I feel like everybody now does get some contact with their baby. That's really good. I mean, from personal experience, I had 2 emergency cesareans. I didn't have skin to skin with either of my babies. And when I started thinking about it and listening to you, I hadn't even realized I hadn't had it, but I regret that now, that I never had that moment with either of them. But not all skin to skin is the same, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. It's very different. There's different levels, different types, the wrong position of the baby, the right position of the baby, the length of time, the way it's done, the initial contact for the mother. I'm very keen that the initial contact is with the mother.
Yes.
And I think sometimes there seems to be this, I'm not saying everywhere, it just in odd pockets of places, there seems to be that the baby must go to resuscitate.
Yes.
You know, why? Are you doing assessment of the baby? You know, and I think some of it is fear and, you know, when you've been doing something a long time and it's just the culture, that's how we've always done it. It's how do you change that? But I think you have to get a good rapport with your paediatricians. I mean, I had a great rapport with the paediatricians where I used to work. And they were really, I remember saying, we'd been with a woman who had an early cesarean at like 32 weeks because of her a maternal illness. I won't go into that. And I said, look, she's not going to have any more babies. She really wants skin to skin. And I don't know whether it's feasible. And this paediatrician said, Jenny, I'll be in the area where the resuscitation, you just see how it goes with the baby. So I put the preductal sats on, on the right hand. I made sure the baby was skin to skin, and the woman held her baby and got pictures for 7 minutes.
Oh, how lovely.
And I think, sometimes that doesn't mean I'm the best midwife in the world, but we have to just think sometimes those 7 minutes are the 7 minutes that woman would never have had again.
Yes.
She's not going to have any more babies. She had a long-term health problem, which I don't know, a prognosis is not good.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes we have to break the mold, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, completely. And I did skin to skin, and then a woman challenged me who'd had a home birth who had placenta previous, so she had to have a cesarean, and she challenged me as to why the baby couldn't go straight to her. And I started doing that as a routine, so that I passed the baby to the midwife at the woman's head, and the baby goes straight on skin to skin. We've got a towel there to just dry it so it doesn't get cold. But then it's on her body, so obviously it's body temperature, and I leave the cord intact. And most of the time it's okay, but some of the midwives, they kind of see me going to theatre and they're like, oh, it's Florence, we're going to have to do all this faffing around rather than being able to take the baby to the resuscitator and do the tasks that we need to do to tick the boxes, blah, blah. And it's messy giving the baby straight to the mum, and it does upset people. And sometimes they'll say to me, well, I gave the woman the choice and she doesn't want it.
Yeah.
But you and I know, it depends how you ask her, doesn't it? Because if you say, would you like the baby straight away, but then I'll have to take it away, or I can take the baby, clean it up, get it all ready, and then you can have it for a longer period of time. Well, the way you suggest it affects the woman's decision. And then I'm told, oh, no, Florence, she doesn't want the baby straight to her. She wants it cleaned up and sorted out first.
Do you think that some midwives say it in a way that it makes it easier for them? Are we forgetting why we're there? Like I've heard people say that, oh, she doesn't want skin to skin. And then I've gone to the woman and said, I've just come to talk to you about skin to skin, the benefits. Do you know about the reason why you have it? If it's a term baby, that you are reducing your baby's risk of being admitted to the neonatal unit, with the ATTAIN study. Then the woman has gone, oh my God, I didn't know that. So it's not informed consent, is it?
That's true. That's very true. Yes. And I think the thing that really annoys me is when the baby's gone straight to the mum, the baby's in skin to skin, the baby might be a bit grunting. So, as we know, grunting can be a little bit of a sign of the baby's breathing, it's working hard to breathe. And then they take the baby away because the baby's grunting. And I'm thinking, but actually, if you leave the baby there, the baby's likely to stop grunting. But if you take it away, it's going to grunt more. And then you're going to need to put it under the warmer or do a blood gas or, do all sorts of other interventions. And then the baby's more likely to go to the neonatal unit because you took it off the woman because it was grunting. And if you left it on the woman when it was grunting, it might have been all right. But I still haven't managed to get through that barrier.
Do you think there is a lot on the midwife in theatre? Because I think there is a lot on the midwife in theatre. Because the midwife in theatre goes in, checks the woman in, prepares the postnatal notes, prepares the digital data. then has to generate the birth notification. I never did that. I used to put baby not weighed in Skin to Skin, and I used to get so many phone calls from childcare.
Yes. Yeah.
But I just used to go, because, yes, but Jenny, I go, I know, but so what? And I think sometimes midwives feel this pressure to complete everything, because then
totally
the same midwife who has to come back to theatre with the next case. We're talking
totally
list. So
I totally agree.
Something needs to change for the midwife. So there needs to be, perhaps there should be, a midwife with a maternity support worker who can actually do some of the, some of the data. Because you can anybody can input data as long as it's accurate. It doesn't mean, they don't do the birth notification, but they do a lot of the work on the computer.
Yeah, I agree, because also, because particularly if you're a straightforward section might only take about half an hour. So in that half an hour or even less, you've got to do your APGAR scores, potentially do your baby check, give vitamin K, weigh the baby, do all the computer forms that you've just mentioned. And therefore, the time actually spent with the woman with the baby is tiny. And, and I find our anaesthetists are often the people looking after the woman and the baby and taking the photos of the new family and doing that stuff. And the midwife's, she's in the corner on the computer.
Yeah. You see, I was a real rebel at work. You can imagine it, can't you? And I used to just, if anybody went near that baby, because I had computers in the room, I used to put the baby in position, but I didn't walk away. I used to watch the baby. And then I stopped doing the computing. I just thought, no, because I'm not observing that baby.
Yeah.
And I think it's these external pressures as a midwife.
Yeah.
That you feel unable to challenge the system and say,
yes,
I can't do all those things because I've got too much to do. And it's, if somebody has twins or triplets, the midwife is still expected to do, one midwife is still expected to do all the paperwork. And I think something needs to change with this.
Yeah. And I can see, while we're talking, I'm thinking, the pressure for the midwife, I totally accept. Sometimes that's my fault, because I will leave the operating theatre and then I'll do the notes, and the midwife and the team in theatre, they've got to transfer the woman onto bed, they've got to transfer her to recovery, they've got to clean the theatre, they've got to lay up, they've got to get everything ready for the next case, blah, 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 blah. And all that time, I'm like, come on, next, and that is the reality, because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've got 3 or 4 cesareans to get through, and I don't want those women at the end to be waiting a long time and feeling anxious about their surgery and all the rest of it. So, some of that pressure on the midwives is coming from me. I acknowledge that. That's really, and that's bad.
So in that sense, then, does that mean, just is like a great discussion, Florence, does that mean that women who have caesarean birth are given a short shrift? Because women who have, if you look at women who have a physiological birth, then if you're on a birth, I mean, I've worked on a birth centre for many years, and you stay with that woman, and the birth centre has got its own kitchen, so you get that woman toast. You are with woman continuously.
Yeah.
You don't go off somewhere and think, I'll just have to go and do that.
I think they do get short shrift, because they come in, they meet the midwife, but the midwife's got to meet, like you say, all the women on the list. And then when they are out of theatre, they go into, well, in my unit, they go into a high dependency, and we've got nurses doing the observations and the post-op recovery. We have got midwifery support workers, who are fantastic. They really are. And they do a lot of our infant feeding support and so on. So I don't want to do them down.
No, I absolutely adore maternity support workers.
Yeah.
I worked
But
with some amazing maternity support workers.
The time the woman has with a midwife is very limited compared with the physiological birth. Yeah, I agree. And then they go off to a busy postnatal ward where it's also limited, isn't it? And no, that's the reality.
But what can we do about that? How can that change? Is it, is the data on this? How much time does a midwife spend with a woman having a physiological birth as opposed to a woman who's having a elective or even an emergency cesarean?
Yeah, probably not.
So perhaps something needs to change.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, very, very interesting food for thought. Definitely.
It's always good to think of different things.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I love the fact that doing what I do and doing my podcast and doing MatExp and whatever, it always pushes my thinking. So, chatting to you, I'm thinking, that's the first time I'm thinking, oh, time with the midwife. Oh, yeah, that's very limited. Oh, am I partly responsible for that? Because, it's not something I think about. So, yeah, fantastic. I wanted to also talk to you a little bit because I know, coming back to the being with women, you'd said to me a bit about trying to really be with that couple and with that woman in their birth experience. And I know there are a few special things you do that are so simple, but which made me think, oh, that's really personal. That's really special. So I remember ages ago you telling me that any woman you looked after, you would ask how the couple had met, how they got together. And I thought that was a really lovely way of getting to know someone that you're caring for and looking after on your shift and having that personal connection. So tell me a little bit about why you started doing that.
Well, I think as a midwife, I always wanted to be a little part of know how they fell in love, know how they, not some people don't decide to have a child, it just happens, doesn't it?
Mm.
And I just wanted to know that aspect of the life so that I could feel more of a I don't know, more of a connection with them.
Mm.
And I felt like when I did start this conversation with them, and how did you two meet, it just sort of stopped us talking about things like how often are your contractions, when are you feeling in this, how's your pain. It just took the mind away to when they first met. And it was a really lovely connection to have with them, and I felt very, sometimes I say, you don't need to tell me. They go, oh no, it's quite funny, Jenny. And, and they tell me these stories like I met her at my sister's wedding, or, little things like that. And it was really nice to just be able to know that it's like an insight into that child's life, isn't it?
Yes.
And it just made me feel like, I don't know, like I was interested in how they met, because that's part of being a midwife, isn't it? And I think sometimes we forget about little things like that. It's just nice to know things like that, I think.
Yeah, and I love it at work when a midwife comes out of a room and she starts saying, oh, it's so interesting. We're talking about this, we're talking about that, we're having fun. And part of me feels a little bit envious, actually, because as an obstetrician, you're, dashing in and out of different rooms and you do get a connection with people. I think I probably get a lot more connection with the women that I care for in the antenatal clinic, and you're kind of seeing them all the way through. Or I've got women that I've seen through successive pregnancies. So I've seen them through their entire family. And that's lovely. But that I kind of dip in and out of a birth room, whereas the midwife is in there kind of getting to know that couple. And sometimes that's brilliant. Sometimes obviously that's hard. because you're in there constantly. But that connection, that seemed lovely. And you said to me something the other day about writing a birth email.
Oh yeah, I used to do. So when the baby was born, then I would compose a little story written to the baby about how the mother did in labour and how, or cesarean section, how amazing she was and how much she loved holding you when you were born and how proud your daddy was, or your other mummy, or your other daddy, and all these things. And I used to send it to the couple. And because I think it's just like a little story that they might, when you're really tired and you're in pain and you're in labour, excuse me, you don't always remember everything. So I didn't put like bad details on it, but I'd put she was a warrior, and I'd put things like that. Your mum was a birth warrior, or, we had to go to theatre and it was complicated, but your mum just kept, when you were born, your mum just gave you one big smile and it was all worth it. And I did little things like that, and they really loved them.
That's
I put
so
some
lovely.
of them in my portfolio, and one of the supervisors said it was interesting, and you just get that comment like, no, but you don't get it. But I think the connection with finding out about how people met emanates from being a community, because I used to be a community midwife a long time ago, for about 7 or 8 years, and I absolutely loved meeting people in their own homes.
Yes.
And I used to go to home births. So I think I wanted to try and, in the birth centre, replicate that kind of relationship with the family, of continuity and feeling, that I think it's about, when you meet somebody for the first time, you're going to look after them in labour, you've got to break down the barriers, because no point being aloof. You've got to give them warmth and love and make them feel good about themselves.
That's very interesting what you're saying about community, seeing people in their own homes, because I definitely noticed that when I went out with our home birth team, that seeing people in the context of their lives, so the other children, the dog, the building work, the whatever was happening in their own surroundings, definitely puts a whole different dimension to who they are, doesn't it? Yeah. So I like that idea of bringing that sort of feeling and that sort of connection into the maternity unit. That's great. Also, you said something about music.
Oh, I always used to try and sort music out, either in theatre. Like, we didn't have it on full blast. I'd say to family, if you want to have it quietly on your headphones or just at the side of your pillow, you can have whatever music you like. But also I was keen on music in the birth centre as well for the families, because I think it's people listen to music all the time, and it's very sort of, it's part of our lives now, music.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of families felt like they were more at home because they put their own music on.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of the music would not be the music I would have chosen in labour.
No.
But that is yourself, that is your identity, your self-expression, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember one woman singing Nicki Minaj song in the pool, and she knew all the words to Nicki Minaj, and she was just rapping away. And she was being like 9 centimetres dilated, rapping away to Nicki Minaj. Amazing. And she came back to see me on the birth centre. It's quite funny.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, Jenny, do you remember?" And I said, "I learnt some of the words of that song." And we were standing in the corridor singing it together, laughing.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden the door opened, and it was one of the senior managers saying, "Can you two be quiet, because we're having a meeting in this room?" And I said, "Oh, sorry, this is actually," I think she was called Sarah. I said, "This is Sarah, who gave birth in the birth centre last week, and she was rapping this song." And the manager went quite flushed, because she thought we were just two people standing singing. So she got a bit embarrassed then, because she was telling us off. Then she realised it was, somebody who'd used the service who was happy. We just giggled about it. We just giggled about it after.
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea of singing. I've heard of people dancing in labour, and And there's a fab video. I'm not sure if it's American, of an obstetrician dancing with a woman in labour to try and get the baby down through the pelvis.
Oh, I've seen it. He's so good. He's such a happy guy.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, I really wish I could do that, but my dancing's appalling. but the idea of singing in labour, that's new to me. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, we have music. And I love having music in theatre, actually. I love it when I'm operating, and I'm always really interested to see what people have chosen. And if they don't know what they want, we used to have a fantastic anaesthetist, and he'd just say to them, okay, which decade were you a teenager? And he would just put on something from that era.
Him.
Always worked, always. It was perfect. It was so good. But you're right. And different music has different meanings. So the other day, someone had something on. It was Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. And I used to listen to that when I was at university. So I was doing this cesarean, just thinking, it takes me right back to being, 18, 19.
That is a good album.
Really happy times, And so, and I've had musicians. We had, some professional musicians, and they brought in stuff of their own classical recordings and stuff. It's fantastic. So I agree. Music is a kind of key way to get to know a little bit about what people like and what they don't, and so on.
Yeah,
really great.
And sometimes people don't want music. I looked after somebody once who'd had two difficult cesareans, and one not a good prognosis for a firstborn. And she just said, all I want, Jenny, is I was lucky enough to be with her for a third cesarean and the other two cesareans. So we had this special bond.
Oh, that's lovely.
And she said, all I want, Jenny, is just nobody to speak, and I just want to be able to hear my baby cry, because the two babies had not cried at birth, and it really had an impact on her.
Yeah.
So we had silence in theatre, and I said to her, no, please don't speak when the baby's being born.
Yeah.
The baby cried, and honestly, everybody in theatre was in tears.
Tears.
So moving. So moving.
Yeah. That's so special.
Very special.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of brings us back to that sort of individuality, how important that it's right for that individual woman and family and baby.
Yeah, and spiritual and religious beliefs.
To
be observed. Yeah. Sometimes we forget and treat everybody the same, but we all have to have our own. We've all got our own different lives, our own different beliefs. Haven't we?
Yeah, completely. Fabulous. So at the beginning, you talked a bit about being surrounded and intimidated by this gang of midwives and having to stand on a chair. And that kind of brings me to, I wanted to talk to you about courage, because you wrote this fantastic blog about courage butter, and I made you a little pack of courage butter once. Because I found it such an inspiring blog about the idea that you needed to take it and spread it everywhere. So could you tell me a little bit about, where did that idea come from, courage butter?
Well, I used to be, the 6 C's.
Yes.
So I was one of the sort of advocates for that. I can't remember the name that we got now, but I don't know if you know Paul Jebb on Twitter, but he nominated to be a caremaker. I was a caremaker.
Yeah.
So the 6 C's, and one of them was courage. And it made me think a lot about how do we show courage at work. And I don't really know if I'd ever thought about it before. But when these midwives were intimidating me about skin to skin, and can I just tell you now that they are all now doing skin to skin, these midwives.
Yes.
So that's good, isn't it? I don't mean that I've won. I mean that they've seen.
Yeah, the women are getting the right thing, and the babies are getting the right thing.
It's for the women. And I just saw, I was reading about courage, and I thought, I'm going to write about that. And it just went a bit mad, that blog, because then Jane Cummings wanted to use it as part of an article that she was doing. And the Maya Angelou quote about courage as well. Don't ask me to quote it now because I can't. But it just made me think, how do we show courage at work for women? We need to show courage for women and speak up for women. And sometimes it doesn't always fit in well, does it, when you speak out for somebody else, to a colleague who believes this or doesn't believe that. Or somebody who's more senior to you, it's very difficult. But I think if your main focus is always the well-being and safety of the woman, then you're in the right spot. You're in the right place.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think courage is quite difficult at work, because speaking up for the woman and speaking up for the baby and doing the right thing, it, like you say, you'd think that would be acceptable and would be what everybody would be doing. But like you said, sometimes it can get you into trouble or can be unpopular and make life personally for you quite uncomfortable. And, you're not the only person that I've talked to who's worked in the NHS that, if you stick your head above the parapet and try and do the right thing and try and buck the trend to do that right thing, you kind of get squashed back down.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It is, and I was squashed back down, but I don't know. I think I found some kind of solace in Twitter and the people on Twitter, and I got some strength from that. But in the end, I just gave up the fight. Really, I was getting older, and I thought, I'm not now enjoying. I'm enjoying looking after the women, but I'm not enjoying the situation in the office, the way people speak to me.
Yes.
And like people taking the mickey because I got a few awards. One midwife actually said to me in the office, I think we should make you a hat with your awards on and you can walk around with that on. I mean, why is that even funny?
Oh,
I didn't want to talk about my awards. I wanted to just, think it's something that just happened to me.
Yes.
And mainly it was probably because of my skin to skin, but I just felt it a really mean thing to say.
Yeah.
So in the end, I just walked away from them. And, I think my friend always says to me, that is courageous to walk away.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's true. In itself, that's a really difficult thing to do. Yeah.
So I still help like student midwives and midwives on Twitter. And I still like dip into little things and help people with things or messages from women. So I still feel like I'm achieving things for women.
Yes.
And, that's my main goal, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not always about being in the zone, is it, of the NHS?
Yes.
You do things outside of it, I think.
No, I think that's a very good lesson, actually, that you can still contribute and can still do stuff from outside, but in a different way. Yeah, that's really good. And you mentioned that you just contributed to this book, the Nurturing Maternity Staff book.
Yeah, Nurturing Maternity Staff by Jan Smith. And it's let me get my glasses on because then I can read what it says on the tin. It says how to tackle trauma, stress and burnout to create a positive work culture in the NHS. And it's just about why maternity staff are under pressure, with many leaving their job each year. Personal sacrifices, long working hours, lack of resources. Many tolerate these conditions in the service of doing a job they love, but what happens to mental health over time?
Yes.
It's a very good book because it's got lots of tips in it and it's got lots of stories in it. And I've just written a little section. If you want me to read a little section of mine, I won't read it all. But I just literally said, when women are looking at which maternity unit to choose, a good question to ask would be, how do you care for your midwives, maternity support workers, cleaners, obstetrician, clerical staff? Because when employees are nurtured in the work environment, they are more likely, turn over the page, To give good care. An organisation that prides itself on giving good care to its staff will transmit a positive vibe and a warm welcome for both staff and women.
That is perfect.
Yeah, so
that's
I think
so true.
It is.
Because, there's a lot of correlation between staff surveys and patient surveys in terms of satisfaction. And that's a really good, in fact, I think, so you probably know at the end of my podcast I have a zesty bit. I think that probably has to be the zesty bit.
The zesty bit?
The zesty bit, obviously, because of lemons, because I have a whole thing about lemons with Jill.
We like lemons.
But the zesty bit is the kind of message of each episode of, this is the little essence. This is the bit I want you to take away and think about. And I try and do it for both staff and for pregnant women and families. And I think that's the perfect zesty bit for today, because it's that thing of, if you're a woman, pregnant woman, choosing your maternity service, this is how to go about it. But also for staff, actually, if you're thinking about whether you want to work in a unit, find out what their staff survey says. Talk to people that are working there. Find out a bit about how they treat their staff and what they do for their staff, what's available, because that is the true test of things, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
And what supervision and support and so on are you going to get, whether you're a newly qualified midwife or a team leader? Are you going to be supported and developed and have progression and joy at work?
Yeah, joy at work is a big thing. There's
been a whole project at my work about joy at work, which actually when I saw the title Joy at Work, I must admit I was thinking, oh, okay, good title, but what are you going to find? But yeah, getting back to that joy at work.
Oh, joy at work for me was handing a woman a baby and letting
Yes.
It is possible.
I love it when you get the new batch of medical students and they arrive on their first day on labour ward, all really, really kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then you take them in to a birth, whether it's vaginal or whether it's cesarean or whatever, it doesn't matter, and they come out kind of, oh my God, I just saw a baby born, this is incredible. And that amazing feeling. And it's funny because obviously the more you do it, the more it's not routine, but the more you get used to it. But I do often stop and think, wow, it's a whole new person. And I know it sounds really cliched, that kind of miracle, but it is bloody amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing. It's utterly incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I was chatting to my older daughter the other day. We were doing yoga together. She got me to take up yoga in lockdown. It's brilliant. And right at the end of the yoga session, you had to lie in a fetal position. So we were both there lying in a fetal position. And then we got up and we finished. She's nearly 23. And she turned to me and she said, I was lying in a fetal position thinking, oh my God, how did I ever fit inside mum? And I think, obviously she knows I'm her mum and she knows where she came from and she knows she was smaller. But I think it just suddenly popped in her head of how weird and amazing is that I actually came out of my mother, do you know? And I think that's the thing about birth, isn't it? It's like, I know it sounds totally stupid, but it's like 1 minute there's nothing, and the next minute there's a whole new person. Like I just said, a new person with all this potential and their whole life ahead of them, and it's incredible when you stop and think about it.
It's just wonderful, isn't it? It's just wonderful.
Yeah. that's, you're right, the joy at work, that's getting back to that. And, you know, coming home at the end of the day and thinking, oh, I was at 4 births today. That was a good day. That's what it's all about, isn't it, really?
It is, definitely. It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is a real privilege. Fantastic. Well, I've kind of finished my list of kind of things I thought we might talk about. Anything else you think you'd like to add, Jenny?
Oh, I've loved it. I've just loved talking to you. It's just so natural, isn't it?
Oh, it's lovely to talk to you too. And I've been so looking forward to doing this, and I hope it's going to be something that will really make people kind of stop and think, because it's an absolute pleasure to have you join me.
Oh,
so thank you very much.
Smile. That's the main thing, isn't it?
I'm sure it will, Jenny. And I'm very grateful to you for giving up your time and bearing with me and giving it a go.
We gave it a go, didn't we?
We gave it a go.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. I do hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode of the theobspod. Feel free to contact me on Twitter at FWmaternity or at theobspod to ask me questions, give me topics for future episodes, or let me know what you think. It's absolutely fantastic when you get in touch. I really enjoy reading your comments. As usual, I've tried to include in the programme notes some extra reading about this particular topic, both for professionals working in maternity care and for pregnant women using services. I'd like to reassure you that although I'm talking about my experiences working in maternity care, I take confidentiality very seriously and do not give any personal information about any of my patients. If you've enjoyed listening, I'd love you to recommend the theobspod to friends or colleagues, and please do leave me a review on whichever podcast directory you find my episodes. Many thanks for listening.